My name is Rachel D'Argenio, and I am the America's Mobility Market Leader for EY. I am sitting today with Andrea Filippelli, who is the EY America's Leader for Global Employment Organizations. So Andrea, many companies are talking about global employment organizations called either GEOs or GECs for short. Can you share an overview of this structure for us?
Certainly, and thanks for having me today. A GEO is an internal separate legal entity that employs or contracts with a distinct worker population and then provides specialized services to the broader affiliated group. Essentially, it serves the organization as an in-house service company. The goal of the GEO is to manage a cross-border workforce in a tax-effective and administratively efficient environment while simultaneously providing employees with benefits and a worthwhile employee experience. Companies set up these structures to either manage risk, centralize administration, streamline operations, or provide specialized benefits to a subset of their employee population, the cross-border worker. In exchange for the services, the GEO will charge the operating entity an arm's length service fee, maybe a commission or general service charge based on the activities. And this represents the fee, this fee represents the GEO's profit.
So to restate it, the GEO carries out a service for the affiliated group of companies through an employee population. Traditionally, this cross-border employee group was international assignees. GEOs have been used by the Fortune 500 for more than the last 50 years in this way and are a well-known tool for assignees or expats. I'd like to take a deeper dive into this structure and also why companies consider it. Can you start by telling us why GEOs are so popular right now? Why is everyone talking about them?
In the market, we're seeing an exponential surge in cross-border workers and thus the risks associated with these populations. Everyone's talking about GEOs because the GEO is specifically designed to facilitate this type of global employment. As you could expect, there's different kinds of cross-border workers, such as remote workers. Those who are just based in another location than their employer, those on assignment, business travelers, international rotators, and the like. And we see these worker populations in various instances. Let me highlight a few. Number one, we see them arise as a result of a company's global talent strategy, specifically where the company has a desire to acquire the best talent globally, regardless of location. Two, in remote working, considering both the work location flexibility provided by the company and quite possibly the demands of employees to work wherever they choose. A third group comes up where there's a merger or acquisition or sales activity. When a transaction's cross-border and leaves employees, let's say, stranded in a location that doesn't have a company presence, a GEO can be used to employ these one-off third country nationals. And of course, as you mentioned, Rachel, in a more traditional sense, we see cross-border workers as a part of a company's formal global mobility program and more broadly, where a company operates internationally. But regardless of cross-border type, not only can a GEO facilitate these global employment arrangements, but it can help solve for a wide range of risk, compliance, and administrative requirements that these employees trigger.
You just mentioned risk, compliance, and administration. Each of those is a big factor in its own right. Can a GEO solve for each of these at the same time? Are there key reasons why a company would set up a GEO?
Yep, so it can solve for each of these challenges concurrently. In terms of the reasons why companies set up a GEO, I would put it into 4 categories: better manage risk, efficiently manage administration and compliance, drive strategy, and provide employees with a worthwhile experience and company-aligned compensation package. I'll start with risk and administration because these tend to be the key focus drivers. From a risk perspective, because the GEO sits within the organization and provides transparency to all transactions, it helps the company understand its obligations. Well-established structures also have strong processes and documentation that further supports these efforts. Turning to administration and compliance, the GEO centralizes it all, and especially at scale, it can create notable benefits in the way of time savings. For example, where multiple operating entities within a company have individuals going to the same country, technically, each entity could be triggering risks or requirements based on the activities and presence of the individuals. However, if all the individuals were centrally employed by the GEO, only one set of compliance requirements would be necessary. Turning to strategy, and specifically business strategy, companies will use a GEO to agilely move into or out of markets. This facilitates and actually accelerates global business expansion. On the talent side, the GEO allows for the organization to hire the best talent, regardless of whether they live within or outside of the company's current footprint. From a transaction sense, like I mentioned before, companies may have stranded employee populations for which they need to figure out how to employ and bring them into the organization. Again, the GEO can be the structure to do so. Finally, regarding employee experience, companies find that they build a better sense of company affiliation and that they can offer company benefits with the GEO employment model. For many organizations, this is in contrast to bringing remote workers on board, leveraging independent contractors or a third-party employer model.
It sounds like a GEO is a great solution to consider, addressing compliance and administrative challenges while also providing for ways to successfully accelerate achieving business and talent strategic goals. We have seen, though, that there are other approaches that companies will take. Can you shed some light on these alternatives and when they might work?
Yep, so companies do take other approaches, many of which focus on a subset of the drivers I highlighted a moment ago. Today, we're seeing that as companies would like to engage remote workers and don't see an internal solution, they look to either bring the individuals on board as independent contractors or leverage a PEO.
And what is a PEO, Andrea?
A PEO, for those of you who are not familiar, is a third-party professional employer organization who will hire identified talent through its company. They'll provide local benefits, deliver pay, and manage employer compliance requirements. In exchange for its services, the PEO will charge a fee upwards of 20% or even more of employees' gross remuneration. For specified short-term needs, a PEO could be a worthwhile solution. Yet, we see definitive gaps with using a PEO structure, namely around corporate tax risk and the ability to provide equity and other benefits of the company itself.
I'm particularly keen on hearing more about the PEO model, which I understand many companies are considering for their cross-border remote workers. Specifically, can you take a few moments to compare the GEO and PEO models you described?
Yes. As we know, the GEO is an internally based approach, and the PEO is an approach leveraging an external third party. In each instance, the GEO or the PEO would hold responsibility for delivering pay, providing benefits, and managing employer compliance requirements. So for the GEO, this would be done by the company, likely with the support of its current vendors. With the PEO, that agency would undertake the compliance requirements directly in exchange for its fees. To compare, let's go back to the key drivers I just shared. On the administration side, especially where there's multiple countries and employees involved, you'll see that the PEO can be good at meeting local employer reporting and withholding requirements, providing local benefits, and managing certain HR workflows. In the GEO's case, the company employees and their vendors would directly manage those requirements. The GEO is responsible for execution. The cost is often far less than that of the PEO, but the potential headache caused by these obligations may be seen more costly than the PEO fees. Turning to the risk side, like I mentioned, this is where we actually see definitive gaps in using the PEO structure. First, there's risk that despite paying the service fee to the PEO, it may not meet compliance obligations accurately. Second, we've seen many PEOs go out of business unexpectedly and the company's left to deal with the consequences. Finally, we've seen heightened focus and scrutiny from tax authorities around PEO structures, and authorities have pierced through these structures, especially when individuals are acting like company employees. Finally, with regard to the company's talent strategy and employee experience, we've seen organizations provide PEO employees with employee company-specific benefits that should only be offered to company employees. This creates a whole host of challenges, as you could imagine, but is deemed necessary to win the war for talent. When comparing the two, in summary, I would say the PEOs are great for small-scale, short-lived hiring needs, but once you reach a critical mass, a GEO is likely a much better solution. And as I've highlighted through our discussion, there's a lot that a GEO can solve for at once.
Thank you. This was a great explanation. Sounds like the GEO could be a worthwhile approach for many internationally operating companies. Given this, how can tax and HR leaders determine whether they have a business case for a GEO?
So companies need to assess their needs today and into the future. The questions to consider include, do they engage with the type of cross-border worker we highlighted? Do they anticipate, due to business or talent-driven strategic initiatives, that they'll have a growing need for cross-border talent? Or do they currently lack the infrastructure to address compliance and administrative needs of their cross-border workers? If the answer is yes, a GEO may be worth evaluating. In that case, we'd recommend that a company conduct a feasibility study to definitively validate whether there's a business case to establish a GEO. Then we would recommend that due diligence is undertaken to determine the company's ideal design of the GEO. In fact, we've worked with hundreds of companies to support them with their GEO workflows, so we'd be happy to offer our support.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrea, for sharing your insights today. And thank you all very much for listening. As a reminder, this is a part of a video series, and our perspective will be further elaborated with forthcoming articles. I look forward to our next time together.